finished?
Ready to go?
Yep.
So just wait for the mic. Actually, we're not
I
there.
know, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, how are you?
Ooh, it's the 25th, right?
That's 7 months for Christmas. So I will say, actually Christmas is May 25th, not December 25th. Christmas born on May 25th.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, now I got you. I thought it was February 25th.
Hey, everybody ready?
Is that Paolo?
That's what it looks like.
So I'd like to call the work session to order for our regular weekly meeting for the City of Plattsburgh Common Council. At the work session, we're going to have an opportunity to go into greater depth and ask any questions on any items that people would like to draw out of the agenda. This time, though, we will sometimes go into executive session. I'd like to propose an executive session to have our legal counsel explain to us
a matter of potential litigation and involving a vehicle purchase as well as the discussion of interest arbitration.
with regard to the city versus the city of firefighters. Do I have a motion? Moved by Councilor Presser, second by Councilor Ansel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Take your cat now.
Hey, that's not legal Apparently our insurance doesn't know what to cover. So we're just my wife has. The man was saying that way so many times. You say it was for some reason, some votes, I think, When I first moved here, I was at I remember, I wanted to go to a conference and I only had one day of my schedule. And the conference so I was like, but not all the way.
Yeah, they were all the leftovers. Oh, no, you're talking about where it comes back. Oh, yeah. They're still around. Yeah, they do. But Brian and Cody are but they love them. They yeah. Yeah. And they're
No worries.
whatever. Now it's different. Now it's different.
They have to be concerned about how long I bring.
We're concerned though. We're like, our office. Yep. Well, that is over. I do I try to call it. I have. Right.
I had it once in a half. So we went up, but he said there's no way to this. You could go up there and just there's like a brick wall or something. He checked it out.
Homeless people up there. They just traded heads up. The article was saying that this defenseman was not on the right system, and he's fit right away. You know, that was interesting. On fire? Who's in the Pittsburgh? 67. It's like lopsided. That's what's great about hockey. You know, this sport is called flight. Hockey, no, it's just rough. We're just rough. We'll give you a couple of minutes to fill out. Just put it over there. Put it over on the side. It's great
He did on the Star Wars day. That's the funniest thing. Are you
Yeah, I'll be doing that fuzzy skate tonight. If I get out of here by 7:45. It's a big if.
also is known as Exchange Day?
He said, you know, these guys, anytime they're ready, you know, that's, yeah, really, really close. So it's been a few weeks. I guess I couldn't get enough guys. 2 years getting close. It's like these guys are moving younger, faster than your reach.
So it's good workout. That's why. Way smarter than we do determine.
Ready for your weekly report?
I guess so.
Well, I could, but I'm here tomorrow.
So.
There you are.
Take
So I was wondering where you went to.
Great battery. Just what I need to happen. Maddie goes.
War stories from the past. Poker games.
I was waiting for the Friday night. Not very Aaron Becker.
Oh, I know what you're doing.
Yeah, I know. We were waiting for the Friday.
We couldn't hear where we were sitting, we couldn't hear her. I know, I think muffled.
Well,
How fast you
I wanted to do that.
Sounds like it's fast.
Well, it's not, it wasn't, it's just like from wherever we were, whatever we were sitting.
It's not like before where here's your result. Now it's.
Now it's on us to do all of it. RFPs, RFIs.
You gotta stop.
Everybody.
The RF.
Yeah, you know about it. So, should be interesting. Maybe I'm hoping that, you know, make some money.
Don't retire.
Sure that I have rules. But I know that their state is looking forward
They were just saying.
That spreads through to more regions. That's very attractive. So what if you try so in that case, that person park all day, as long as you want. Always ready for the day and the weekend. Even if we charge
You're right, Goodwill would. Well, that's right, yeah. My battery's almost good, so. You win some, you lose some, or you just win some, or you just take yourself. My name's Mike, they're on Monday also anyway, but then my school. Sunday, we're gonna go to my sister. My sister lives, near,
So we stay overnight here?
I don't know, on Sunday, her husband, who had, off and Greg's off that day, so we're barbecue and her kids and my kids are really well, that's yeah, and then Monday we'll probably like ride, actually Saturday.
It's alright.
Yeah, really.
Plus an hour.
Keep it
I need more time, so I can easily do it on the smartphone. It becomes a little more.
Their door. Is the right door still here? The right
Waiting for Becky.
Looks like we've shed a few counselors, so we'll just wait for just a second. Sorry for the delay.
What you just did. Yeah, it was bad. Jazz hands.
Well, thank you for your patience. Let's begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, we got to return from the executive.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got to return from executive session. We can stay standing. We're returning from executive session. We made no decisions. We were discussing a couple of complicated issues with regard to the recent firefighters arbitration and with a purchase of a fire truck. So I'll let you know that later. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Armstrong,
here.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Dowdle.
Here.
Counselor Ensel.
Here.
Counselor Casper.
Here.
Counselor Kretzer.
Here.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on May 18, 2017 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Counselor Ensel, second by Counselor Kretzer. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending May 24th, 2017 in the amount of $496,841.97 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the reports as listed are hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Counselor Ensel, second by Counselor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the bills audited by the Common Council for the week ending May 26, 2017 in the amount of $1,926,656.20 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Casper, second by Counselor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the part of the agenda that we invite anybody up to speak to any items of your concern that we're dealing with on the agenda. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting as well for any items of concern to you and the councilors. So please, if you'd like to speak to an agenda item, please come on up. Seeing none, we'll continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the contract number 2017-07 painted pavement markings be awarded to Straight Line Industries, Inc. for the unit bid price of $72,790.
I'm glad it's not Crooked Lines Industries. Do I have a motion from Councilor Armstrong, second from Councilor Dowdle? Discussion, please.
I read Mr. Farrington's report on this, and it sounded really interesting. And I just had a question about those pavement markings. That's not painting, right, Kevin? That's something that's adhesive that's applied to the street.
No, it's an epoxy type paint.
Is that more durable than the typical stuff, or is that the typical stuff?
It is quite a bit more durable than the standard paint, yes.
Okay.
Lasts quite a bit longer.
And it sounded like you buy these in pieces. They're sort of
No,
prefabricated.
this goes on like a paint, but it's an epoxy paint. There are the preformed plastic style method too, but this is an epoxy paint.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Drinking water improvement project intent to declare lead agency under seeker. Whereas the city of Plattsburgh, Clinton County, New York, hereinafter the city has established the public benefit to city residents of the drinking water improvement project hereinafter the project.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer and second by Counselor Ensel. All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll have any discussion. This is simply to ask or declare the city of Plattsburgh the lead agency in the discussion on the seeker. Is that correct, Engineer Farrington?
This is John.
Oh, John, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Roll call, pardon me.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves WPCP to advertise for bids for contract number 2017-09, instrumentation services for WPCP.
Moved by Counselor Kelly and second by Counselor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce local law P-1 of 2017, a local law amending Chapter 176, Sections 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the City Code of the City of Plattsburgh.
So you just need to note that it's been provided in its final form to every counselor, and then the mayor can set a public hearing on this local law. I think June 8th would be the next appropriate date, 5 o'clock.
I mean, would it be appropriate to give some indication of what this regards?
Sure.
Okay. And this is,
also given to the public.
oh, well,
Still
for the
public, yeah.
purposes of streaming, this is a revision of the local law concerning open fires and an attempt to really streamline and provide continuity of enforcement of recreational fires versus permitted bonfires.
Thank you.
So just note that the public hearing is set.
So the public hearing will be set for 5 p.m. on June 8th.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the general fund budget by $13,252.50 equally for the unbudgeted revenue and appropriation related to replacing a demolished police vehicle.
Moved by Counselor Kelly, second by Counselor Dowdle. Discussion.
A little history on the demolition of this vehicle, please.
Yes, would Chief like to speak?
The vehicle was involved in an accident. It was not the fault of the officer operating the vehicle at the time, but it was found to be a total loss, and that's the insurance adjustment.
Yep. Okay.
We received the cash already.
I thought so. Okay. Good.
Any further questions or discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Enzel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
There's no travel requests. Items for initial consideration.
Yes,
Counselor Kelly.
I have one. I would like to propose that, and I'll just read this. In accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council hereby authorizes the mayor to cancel a fire apparatus proposal and related documents dated January 26, 2017 with Ferrara Fire Apparatus Incorporated for a pumper fire truck.
I'd like to make a motion to invoke Rule 4.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer, second by Counselor Casper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we can now have discussion.
Don't move motion, or is that implied in the invocation of Rule 4?
It's
You
been
need a
moved
second.
through Rule 4, so it's already been moved and ready for discussion.
Is cancellation the key word in this?
I think at this
Resolution.
point, you'll be authorizing the mayor to explore cancellation, to pursue cancellation. I'd be then working with legal counsel to figure out exactly how to do that within the limits of our rights. Then I'd report back to you about the outcome of that effort.
Does cancellation, would postponing
That's-
be more appropriate word, whereas cancellation seems very definitive?
Feel free to amend the motion.
No,
It's-
that's-
Okay, well, that was part 2 of my question, but you got it, okay.
Yeah, I don't see how we have it both ways.
I would make a friendly,
Before we do that, I would like to suggest that we keep it the way it is, only because that cleans the slate, and then we can start the process all over again if we choose to. The word postpone implies that we will go back to Farrar at some point in the future and purchase exactly the same thing,
I
or
agree.
something very similar. If we cancel, then we've got a clean slate. You know, we can go out for bids again, we can do all sorts of things that we
And
might
we can
not.
go back to Farrar and do that if we so
Absolutely,
determine.
absolutely.
And it's the
or another
possibility.
vendor, that frees us, if we decide we could go to another vendor.
Another
rather than-
vendor, yes, absolutely.
And as a consequence of our discussions with Farrar, it might be the case that cancellation does turn out to be a postponement after all, but at least we have that option in the language that you propose that way.
True.
To revert back to postponement rather than a cancellation.
I'm okay with that.
And what is the cost of the pumper right now?
The cost was,
Give me a second. $594,339, which includes the trade-in.
if it turns out that indeed we ended up fully canceling this or postponing it, I think it would also mean canceling or postponing the associated work on the firehouse that was required and necessitated by this. But we can discuss that at another day. I don't think that is as timely an issue as this one.
Just so the public knows the reason for doing this, we are looking for ways to reduce our overall expenses for the year. And this would reduce the capital budget funding for the year, the bonding that we do, and therefore save the city some money. Even if we only postpone, we have an opportunity for some savings. So that's why we want to do this.
So is there a time frame that we're talking maybe? Is it a 1 year? Do we know at this point? Because I know in 2018, there's a request for a new ambulance as well. So I'm just wondering where that positions that item.
With regard to our discussions with Farrar, I would estimate that it might take a month or two more to sort that out. At that point, we may be coming back to you and saying, let's convert this cancellation to postponement, because that may be in the best interest of the city at that point. Or if it ends up being a cancellation, then I guess we should then begin the deliberations with the chief to decide the timing for a wholly new order. But I think either way, even if it took a couple of months for us to sort this issue out, our Chamberlain has to go for bonding, prepare his documents very, very soon for the ultimate fall bonding. So either way, I think would miss this bonding cycle. If you then decide to postpone, cancel, and reorder, whatever scenario, you'd probably be in a position of actually completing that purchase beyond this bond issue, and you'd be then financing over temporary one-year bans for the next few years. As you know, we then consolidate all those bans up into a bond every 4 or so years. So it would save you the money in the interest payments on the bond in the meantime. And as you know, the ban interest rate is a short-term interest rate, quite a bit lower than you would have been paying for the bond. So that's where you'll extract some of the savings that Councilor Kelly was explaining. So either way, it could mean a very slight delay for the fire truck, or it could mean a reevaluation and a delay of upwards of a year, or whatever you all decide, if you want, depending on how long you want to reevaluate this. But either way, probably the implication would be you'd miss this bonding cycle.
And this would be based upon your findings within, what, are we going to give it 30, 60?
A month or two, I'd imagine we'd have this clarified, you'd expect? Yeah.
All right. And once that clarification is brought to us, then we make decisions.
That's what I would recommend, yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Prepared to vote? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Any other resolutions for initial consideration? Seeing none, any new business or councilor reports?
Just have one. I was informed today by Mr. Tracy that the lights have arrived at the Little League, and that work may begin soon and maybe up next week. Am I correct in that, Bill?
Well, not that fast, but we've already started work. We've been laying conduit in boxes for the electrical lines. So next week, the whole thing will start working on putting the towers up, which is going to be the biggest hassle.
That's exciting. Any
Play
other
all night
reports?
now. Play all night now.
Put me in, coach.
It always seems that way.
I think a number of you were here earlier today. The Lieutenant Governor for the state of New York came up and awarded us the final projects list for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. I know it's very difficult for the city to talk about frugality in one hand in our city affairs, but have optimism on the other hand from this $9.7 million of state money that's coming our direction to revitalize the downtown. But nonetheless, we're looking forward to getting on with that exercise. You may recall, if you've been following this, that we had a set of projects, about 11 projects that we proposed. With some modification, they were all accepted. The only project that was cut back a little bit was, rather than completely revitalizing the area down towards the lake from here, all the way down to the city marina, we call that the Dock Street Triangle. Instead, they've given us enough money to study what we might do with that, rather than to actually begin doing something with that. So we're going to take this as an opportunity to sit down with our engineer and with our department head for the sewage treatment plant and discuss some strategies of what we can do down there. Bill Tracy with MLD's had some novel ideas in that area as well, given that he's got one of the properties down there. So we are going to continue to study and develop plans for that and look for external funding. So I think that overall was very successful, that most all the expectations are met, and hopefully we can start implementing some of the easy things to do right away. Our head of the Community Economic Development Office and myself, Paul and me will be meeting very shortly in the next few days to discuss how we can really get started on this very quickly. So hopefully we'll see some great progress very soon, and other things will take upwards of 2 or 3 years perhaps to complete. But it has now begun. We're very excited and hope you all stay involved and engaged in all this.
And there was one addition to the recipients of the DRI in terms of home ownership?
That's right. The governor actually announced that just a little while earlier, but it really plays into this. One of the big focuses, and I was really amazed by the Lieutenant Governor's insight and intuition about all this. She got up and contemporaneously made a speech, went through all the various projects, and she identified, without having a script in front of her, exactly the reasons why our committee deliberated so thoroughly and why we ended up making these proposals. She really, really got it. She recognized how important it is for us to get people to move into the downtown on a year-round kind of basis. And this new project or new fund for home ownership for people that are just fresh out of college within 4 years of graduating. They're the exact types of millennials that we'd like to see living downtown, as well as other groups like active living seniors and these sorts of things. So I think they do, like you suggest, go really hand in hand together well. It's all about having people live and enjoy themselves more in our downtown core. Any other questions or reports?
I have a question on highway oil. Aren't we ready to bring that down?
We are. We just talked about that earlier today. Within 2 weeks.
Yeah, Preliminary work will start next week, and the demolition should be the following.
Why, are you thinking of planting some flowers there?
It's that time, it's the rain, it's perfect.
And we have had some discussions, we would like to, we've discussed with DPW laying down some soil and grass or something in that area, so it can be reserved kind of as a community space until the Downtown Revitalization Initiative group decides exactly what to do with that entire square block there. So hopefully it'll be back in the public domain in some way, hopefully with lots of flowers and very, very soon. Any other questions or reports? Councilor Kelly?
I'd like to report on the work of the council and the council budget committee, in particular. Becky and Peter stood in while I was away, and I greatly appreciate that. And I think Peter conducted our meetings while we were away. It's wonderful of you to do that, Peter. I actually wrote some comments down here, so I hope you'll bear with me. I don't usually write speeches. I think about what I need to say for a long time, commit the points I want to make to my heart, and then I speak from the heart. It rarely ever fails me. However, this time I felt it was necessary to write a speech to make sure I didn't miss any of the points we need to consider. Harry Truman made famous the expression, "the buck stops here." Of course, we all know he meant that he, as a powerful leader of post-World War II America, bore a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He rose to the challenge. Harry Truman led America out of World War II and into its most prosperous times ever. It is safe to say that America after World War II was the most prosperous nation in the history of humankind. How did Truman do it? He said, "The buck stops here." My grandfather was a similar type of person. He was a farmer. He always said, once you make up your mind to do something, you've got to put your head down and stay with a job until it's done. Of course, he was talking about plowing the cornfield or fixing the barn roof, but the determination was the same. Put your head down and get after it. The buck stops here. The Plattsburgh City Council throughout has taken a similar stance on the city's finances. We're at the end of an era in which cash was readily available and spending was very liberal. Now it is time to do just the opposite. Assess our limitations, realize that taxpayers have limits on their ability to contribute, size our city operations to the realities of the financial climate, and put our heads down and our shoulders to the plow. As our mayor was quoted as saying, "You have to have a solid foundation to have a solid house." And what he meant by that, of course, is that we can't have a viable city on a failing financial framework. To rebuild our financial foundation, we need a plan. Let's start with a 5-year plan that we can hand to the mayor on June 1st, next week. Given our guidance, he can then tailor city operations to meet our plan. He can devise operations and capital budgets that will restore our city to financial strength. He and his department heads can streamline operations to deliver to taxpayers, the people who pay for all this, an efficient, responsive city government. Together we can do all this and more. The buck stops here. Let's put our heads down and get the barn fixed and the plowing done. We need goals to achieve our target of a healthy financial foundation. Those goals are to decide on reductions to 2017 capital spending, which we already started tonight, of course, which will determine our debt service, agree on revenue projections, understand how arbitration costs will affect budgets and adjust accordingly, understand how ongoing increases in labor costs will affect budgets and adjust accordingly, agree on targets for tax levies, agree on fund balance goals, arrive at expense adjustments to balance budgets, and that's what we will do, all those things in our budget hearing tonight, hopefully. Next month, when our 5-year budget is passed and handed to the mayor, I will announce the formation of a Citizens Advisory Council on Finance. We will welcome voices from the community, from anyone who thinks he or she may have good ideas to help us keep our financial foundation on stable ground. The wonderful thing about this time in city government is that we have an opportunity to do things different and to achieve different results. The way in which we handle this opportunity will determine our legacy. I am through kicking financial challenges down the road. We will be the council that ends that practice. We will be the council that deals head-on with financial challenges, whatever they may be. I look forward to working with all of you to meet that challenge. I know we will work together with our heads down until the job is done. The buck stops here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and we will have a budget hearing immediately following this meeting, and the public is invited.
Thank you very much. Makes me want to go and fix my barn roof all of a sudden.
I got some plowing to do.
Any other comments or reports? Seeing none, this is the opportunity for the public to please come up and speak to us about any issue that concerns the city, and please be mindful of a 5-minute time limit.
First and last.
I don't feel like I got committed to memory,
Carol Pepper, 17 Couch. Promised the mayor I wouldn't belabor on 15 Couch. All I'm going to say is that I asked the council and Joshua Klesser 3.5, maybe 4 years ago now, to work on the city code, to button up the loopholes, and still nothing has been done. And we've had 2 other similar situations since then, and again, nothing has changed in the code. So again, I cannot, you know, as a resident, I can't say you need to do this, but we really need to have you do this. It's a simple couple sentences. I worked on other codes. I'd be glad to work with the council and, you know, Joe and whoever else to try to do that. But we really can't wait any longer for more 15 couches to happen, and we're still dealing with Margaret Street. So I asked the counselor, your counselor, to please get back to me to when and how we can get this taken care of. And again, I know that, you know, the city mayor and city attorney and the council are trying to work with Tom Lattenville, but in the meantime, I ask that the porches, that it be swept, that the fence be erected. That's in the code. We don't even need to say you need to do it. It's already there. Regarding the last issue that I brought up, and I'll just be quick because that's not why I'm speaking tonight, is I know that Gene Creech, owner of Renaissance Village, already has Article 7. He's already asking the city to reduce his property taxes by close to $1.5 million. And that will result in a $53,000 deficit for the city annually, both in property and school taxes. We can't afford this. We can't continue to afford to have a domino effect, which is what's happening. First Imperial, then Plattsburgh Housing with the, not Plattsburgh Housing, but the college suites. And it's continuing. It's a vicious, vicious, endless cycle. And the council needs to hire a proper appraisal that does commercial real estate to oppose this, so we have some validity to have our legal counsel say, no, the buck stops here. We can't do this anymore. City residents can't shelter this. But the reason I came is I'm asking Becky Casper, I know that $50,000 was, you know, put aside for capital improvements on Champlain Monument. And I spoke to the city engineer, and it's true, the wall is worse than I think anybody realized, the seawall and the steps. But again, we put that aside to start taking care of this, to stop having erosion happen. And each year that goes by, we're not going to have any more grass. I mean, the 2 pyramids that are part of the historic integrity of that monument, it's not that far away from the shoreline now. And we put, the city put, as their cost savings method, bric-a-brac at the end to stop erosion. It looks terrible, and there's more water erosion happening. So this is a very much a concern of mine. I lived in that area. I've spoken to residents. They are willing to sign a petition or whatever, but I don't think we need to do that. I want to ask Becky to contact me, to ask me to tell me what's going to happen and what we can do as residents to help. But a small part of this is that park
people from Montreal College, everybody goes to that park. There were so many weeds growing up between, I don't know how much we spent on the revitalization of that area for landscaping, but it wasn't just $2,000, and nobody's maintaining it. There are going to be maple trees there. There are already more than seedlings. Is there, Becky, is there a volunteer committee, or what happens with the weeding of that?
There are volunteers who work on it, but, and I've talked to the Mikes in Public Works. We know that we have to get together with volunteers to try to figure out a plan to address it, because the bushes have taken over, there's overgrowth that volunteers themselves just, cannot handle. We need a long-term plan for addressing the Champlain Monument.
Yeah, but I brought this up 2 years ago, again last year, and still there's no plan. I just asked, I know there's volunteers, I know some of them are older now, but as somebody that, is willing to help, even though I'm strung out with my own stuff, it's a matter of having it happen now, because the longer we wait, the weed trees are getting worse. So you're saying that Mike and you and the volunteers
We talked about it in the fall, and we're going to get together and talk about what we can do. We have our limits in what we can do, and there's only so much we can tax volunteers with in the city, and there's only so many resources, but we're putting our heads together to try to figure out what we can do that's manageable. Because it is an important tourist stop.
Okay, I just asked one thing. The city has maintenance crews that mow the grass, that cut the weeds, whatever. We've invested, and this happens throughout the city, we've invested how much? I don't know, you would have the notes, but how much we invested to revitalize that, and it takes maybe 3 hours initially to get that into ship shape, and then put it on a every week or 2 week plan, and have that be part of our budget. So that's what I asked, not to wait anymore for plans.
Well, I just would say that it's not a 3-hour job to fix the Champlain Monument.
Not the Champlain Monument, I'm talking about taking out the weeds and cleaning it up. I know, because I just did it on some of my properties, and it was, getting like that. So let's say it takes, I don't know, but I think instead of talking, I'd like to, I know the residents here would like to see some action. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Carol.
And just one minor correction, the reduction for the taxes that you defined, it's closer to 17,000 for the city's share. I think your number was calculated based on the cities, the school districts, and the county share as well, but certainly we take that at heart, and we've got some strategies we're working on to be much more assertive in those.
I actually got it from the assessor's office, so it's $29,741.31. That would be the result of a decrease in school taxes that we would see each year, and $23,569.81 in land taxes that we would see each year if he gets the $1,340,695 reduction in taxes that he's asking for. Right now, he's assessed at $1,449,000.
Yep, that's enough. We need to move on. Thanks. Anybody else like to come up and speak?
Yeah, thanks.
Please.
Yes, my name is Dave Murchison, and I'm associated with 65 Bridge Street. I have a shop there, as well as the old O'Neill Packaging Building. And actually, things are moving ahead rather, it's been a long time. I've been recovering from an accident in 2006. And prior to that, I had found, some investors to help me out with some projects that I wanted to start here in the city of Plattsburgh. Last week, I went to the new building at Clinton Community College, the Stafford building, and I spoke with some people with the revitalization of, along the lake. And we're looking for an anchor store. We're actually looking to move ahead, and we do have some infrastructure problems that have occurred. I haven't put anything together yet as far as with an architect or anything of that nature, but I do know that we do need to do a study along Green Street, not so much on Bridge Street, but on Green Street. And I have actually been there for quite a while, and I have seen the dangers that are there with the one street that is accessible to the apartments that are located to the right of us. And I've started opening up along the railroad bridge will be a right-of-way. I've already marked it out. I'm also working with John Clute in the back to repair his building, maybe even purchase the properties. They're a package deal. We are moving ahead with our project. I'm with Dasney. I'm trying to get bonded right now. I'm taking the classes with them. I should be bonded in June, maybe September, depending on the projects. I haven't bidded on anything. I'm a certified minority business enterprise, and it's been a really big challenge for me. I had to learn to walk, speak, breathe. It was rather difficult, the accident that I had just recovered from. I had a brain injury as well. I could not speak that well at all. I had no memory. I am very ecstatic that I had people to stand by me for 10 years and know that I have the capability of getting more investors if need so. I'm actually looking at property in Malone right now where I'm working on a project. I do think we are going to move ahead. You will see a lot more movement going on the properties that are located at 65 and 73 Bridge Street. I'm capable of sitting down with any council member or city agencies that are available at that time. Dave is available when he's here in town, but Dave is rather busy. And I would just like to thank everybody, for being patient with me for 10 years, but it did take me that long to recover. But other than that, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Glad you're back at it, and that's a really cool property there too, so we're very hopeful. And, with all this DRI discussion, I think you come back to it at just the right time. Obviously, you'll want to sit down and speak with our Community and Economic Development Office as well, and I'm sure they can be helpful.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Rob Ware, I guess I'm giving you a weekly update on 460 Margaret Street. Joe McMahon reached out to me, said there were some concerns possibly about screening material. So if anybody would like to enlighten me on that.
I'm just wondering, because it is a property as you enter the city, and we certainly want to put our best face forward. Is there any way that we might be able to put some screening up on the fencing to kind of shield some of the...
Yeah, like a green mesh.
Greens, right.
Yeah. Yes, we could do that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
As far as an update on progress, our goal is to start demolition on June 12th. That's the most recent start date that I think is realistic.
So you have the bank has gotten back on their appraisal?
No, they have not, but we're going to go forward with the demolition regardless. We have the means to do that.
Okay.
And there's really no reason to hold it up any longer, in my opinion.
And the last time you were here, there were also questions about what was holding it up was disagreements with your partners?
Just disagreements on whether to move forward.
Without the appraisal?
Right.
So everyone's in agreement that that can happen now?
Yes.
Okay, June 12th.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, and just please keep us informed, and we really appreciate it.
Will do.
Yeah, if we could know the date when you start that demolition, I would really like to.
We'll bring the band.
Close North Margaret Street and have a block party.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come and speak? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Dowdell. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Dowdell?
Yes.
Dowdell? Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper? Yes. Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you. Please stick around, for it's going to be a very interesting and elucidating budget hearing.
Can you get the budget meeting started quick, because I have to leave at 7:30. I got to drive to Albany tonight.
Good meeting.
Sure, absolutely.
Hi there, how are you doing? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You all didn't want to come and talk, huh?
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
There you go.
Oh, is that right? Oh, pleased to meet you.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Type of city government. Oh, my gosh.
Like, I think that we have to check that.
All right, well, we'll put this one.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I can do it, I know how. I know how to do it.
I love the job.
Yeah, but when you
Mike, are you putting in a zippy?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Huh?
See you later, thanks.
Just thought I'd check.
What's the?
Wow.
I know.
It's up to you.
Next page, I want you in there.
Our 45-day clock is ticking.
I feel they gave you enough time, you don't have to run. No.
Let's get a quote from her, Ryan's on, because of the special training.
I think he's putting it in Dragon's Breath. He's magic.
I just learned how to email. Well, there's Brian.
We got it.
We think we know.
We got it.
Where did you go?
Do you really want to know?
You're not allowed.
If that is, right, can I look a copy of the resolution?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Are you all set?
I'm just gonna put it
Great, thanks very much for your help.
Just sign the payroll?
Nope.
Just sign it.
Yeah. You want to show that?
Oh, yeah, his wording?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just gonna grab that. So I don't lose it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have your?
I do, yep, thanks.
Josh is gonna turn it on. Did you get the
Thanks, see you later.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's all worked out? How'd you work it out?
We went back to Little League, like you suggested.
And you said they were,
They totally less than $2,000. So they're gonna go up to whatever I call them, so
The new
now
Raymont.
Raymont, and set up the accounts up there.
and maybe they could appeal to the Graymont to follow through with their previous play.
You know what happened was when I came back 2 years, Joe had talked to, Joe knows people up there, he's had relatives working up there. They gave the original price. But we tried to go back and get it into writing. Our clerk got somebody else, and they said, no, we can't do that. They came up with a different price. Like, you know,
Good, thank
so, but, yeah, he called for the seat. Not a problem.
Good,
So,
appreciate that,
so
that's
we
great.
will be, next week, trying to do a first dig out there, the poles. See how far it's into your home, 2 foot out, it's about in the water, and then,
Yeah.
so that's probably the slowest thing.
So they can get it all done, plenty of time. When do they need the field?
Next year.
Next year? Oh, yeah, you got plenty of time.
Yeah, but, because by the time everything gets done, There's, well, they might have other games during the summer, but they're basically Little League.
Thanks, Brian.
2 or 3 weeks to go, and we'll be done with that.
Cool.
So they're not expecting it by then, but I think they'll play games in July and August, and they're looking to use it then.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks for resolving that.
Oh, no problem there. Food talk.
Yeah, of course, we always do.
Have a good evening.
See you later, thanks.
We're ready to start our budget hearing, so without further ado, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. And all of us are present, so we can bother with the roll call tonight. Interest of saving. Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is our capital budget, and we've already had some discussions about that, and moved a resolution tonight to postpone, cancel, or delay the fire truck. We don't know how it will actually turn out. But the other things we can look at tonight are street projects, some possible reductions there. If we can reduce our capital projects by about $1.4 million, we can save $100,000 or 1% of the levy. There's a typo on my form. But any questions about this agenda item?
No.
One thing that occurred to me is that we could just turn this over to the mayor and the department heads and say find $1.4 million in savings, and they would probably do that for us. But how does the council feel about that?
Well, I think we had significant discussion last week, kind of getting the ball rolling, without your being here or Becky. I feel like if we're gonna reach our goal, we should make sure we pin down what we want to do this week. I mean, I guess they can do it by next Thursday, but I think the council ultimately needs to have oversight over these things.
Well, I actually also think it's a shared responsibility. I mean, it's not just us. It's the mayor, it's the managers. The mayor delivers a budget to the council in October, so I think the mayor should be weighing in on a 5-year plan as well. I think it should all be collaborative.
Okay, then we will do that. Before we do it, Josh, would you bring up the spreadsheet, please? If you look.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin,
yeah.
you mind trying to kill those front lights, please? I think it's the first one. Nope, second one. Thanks.
Oh, that's much better. If you look at line number 9, in 2018, we're going to have an expense of $530,000, and that is related to bonding our capital projects this year. And the objective is to try to reduce that amount. I threw out a reduction of $100,000. In order to achieve that, we'd have to reduce the capital plan by $1.4 million. So can we do that? Well, tonight.
I think we might be able to do more.
Yeah, we might. We were able to reduce the capital plan by about $600,000 by canceling the fire truck tonight. So we're roughly halfway there. So given that introduction in, Josh, if you would bring up the capital plan, that's the next one over to the right there. Or, yeah, that's it. And make that nice and large so everyone can see it. I always feel like when you do it, you're out of the discussion.
No, I'm good, I'm here.
Okay, I wanna make sure and go to page number 8, please. That's the summary. Some of you may have hard copies of this, I hope you do. But, the last page sort of tells a big picture story. Our general fund, capital projects are roughly $4 million, $4.1 million. So we're only concerned right now with the general fund. What can we reduce from general fund capital projects that will net a savings of 1.4 million and then $100,000 next year in bonding.
Might I suggest, why are we stuck on the 1.4? Why can't we go
for
larger?
more. Oh, you certainly can. You certainly can. And you know, the more that we reduce in capital expenses, the more we save the taxpayers. So.
Because, I mean, I'm just saying that we already reduced, in essence, 700,000 with the fire truck and in the bank.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So if we took that and let's say we looked at another 1.3 million.
Okay. Do you have anything specific in mind, Peter?
When I went through the list, I kind of looked at a couple of things that I had let's say, I looked at the Broad Street, Ruger Street, Beekman Street. I looked at Main Road, north and south. I looked at Leonard. I wasn't quite sure if the storm sewer and water filtration plant, if that was under the water and sewer fund, or if that was something that...
That would be water and sewer.
Right.
Can we go to those pages? I think it's 3, 4, and 5, or 4, 5, and 6 for the street projects.
Those are on page 4, yeah.
Okay, so on page 4, I heard Leonard Avenue as a possible delay. Main Road north and south.
No.
Those are big ones. Michelle says
I
no.
heartily disagree, and I think because they go hand in hand with the water main replacement projects, which will be funded by bonding and water and sewer, as well as supplemented later by grant monies. The condition of that road is by far one of the worst in the city. The delays had to do with the fact that construction was taking place at the south end, and so that was part of the reason why it was delayed to the extent that for as long as it was. I think the fact that we have so many water breaks in Lake Country Village, that not addressing this street would be a real breach of kind of public confidence. I think last week you, Kevin, had suggested that there might be a way of sequencing north and south, south being the most afflicted of the areas.
Right, we talked about that as an option. Right off the bat, the one road that I would point to, there's the South Peru Street is, the $4.2 million general fund total is actually less, $460,000 less by virtue of South Peru Street having a state CHIPS fund.
Right.
So there's 460 right off the bat. Now, one option would be if we, now, whereas the main road by comparison is, we've got the general fund. If the preference was to prioritize Main Road and delay South Peru, what we could do is we could adjust those budgets to take that CHIPS money and move it over to Main Road. That would offset the Main Road by $460,000. Oh, that's one thing. The other thing we could do is we could, of course, the one other easy one is the fire station. So that's $175,000 in the
Right.
general fund. Now, we're already into the design, let's say 15. So you could take the remaining $160,000 and reduce that budget by that much, so that's 160 more. So that's 620 so far. And then the Main Road, we could,
I thought if we did with the truck in the bay came to about 700.
the truck of 600 plus the bay is 175, is 675.
775. Right.
775. Minus the 15 we've already got into design.
760. So we're looking for 1.2 more, 1.
Well, I want to be real cautious about this. I think, setting aside what Michael first proposed, that's reasonable. We can't cut out every single capital project that we have. We can't just slash and burn. And especially when you're talking about roads, what is the #1 complaint that constituents have about the city in general? It's the condition of the roads. I agree, we talked about Maine, the brakes, that's got to get done. That just has to get done. So, if we have to raise taxes again and we don't fix the roads,
That's a problem.
I think that's a huge
Big
problem.
problem. You're right.
I agree. I'm fearful that if we delay Maine, we just then end up with additional expenses in water mains. We're just shifting it from one budget to another. And I'd probably would put, the highest priority as I see would be Maine because of this problematic water main issue. And South Peru, only because that can has been kicked down so far for so many years. And, if you don't do it this year, already there's another phase for South Peru. You could do it, I guess, all in 1 year, but if there's already CHIPS money aside for it,
That's
I'd
right.
recommend taking care of at least those 2 roads.
It's kind of like a commercial artery too, isn't it?
Is it South Peru, south of the junction with South Catherine Street?
Yes.
Right, between South
Sure.
Catherine and Sharon.
That's a primary entrance into our city, and that road
With
is
the
awful.
airport.
That's needed repair for years. I wouldn't want to delay that. That's a real, I don't know, it gives you a real impression about our city when you first
Right,
drive.
I absolutely agree with you there, Mike. Plus with the airport there.
Yeah, that's big. So since that's a CHIPS funded item, I would
I would
recommend we leave that.
Leave it with the
So,
CHIPS money.
so then just to expedite the discussion here, can then we agree that we could delay Broad, and Leonard?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay,
And I also
so
have a
then,
question.
yeah.
Oh, go
Can
ahead.
we
No,
split?
no.
There's 460,000 in chips for the South Peru, but there's another 100,000 because there's a total of 560,000 in chips money.
There's actually a number of projects with CHIPS money, and we've got a backlog of unused CHIPS money. We've got, Lorraine is 308,000. We've got 1.03 million currently earmarked in CHIPS money earmarked. That includes our rollover balance of 598,000 plus a new apportionment of 350,000. Plus there was the 5-year Pave New York plan, we're in year 2 of that, that's 79,000. So our total, we have 1.028 million, and out of that, or no, we have 1.028 million allocated over different projects. And we have just slightly about that amount. With our new and recent announcement, we have about that amount.
Okay.
So we're pretty much using it all,
So the rollover is mostly from the Rain Street last year? That was-
largely.
that came into this
And
year?
also Pine,
Okay.
Pine Street, because that's part of the Saranac River Trail project.
And there's some discussion on the cul-de-sacs off Main and the hydrants?
Yes.
Is that,
Yeah.
what does that entail?
Well,
Is that an additional
really not much
cost?
for us, you know, the fact of the matter is it's private property.
Right, it is now.
And so they have, obviously that's their own private road and their own private water and everything else. So, we are working closely with them to coordinate that and do everything that we can to accommodate their taps the way we would any other. You know, we are in the business of selling water, and we're happy to make those service taps for those people. We typically make the tap, get it out of the road, put your service valve in, and we can do the same thing for them. We talked about putting a hydrant in close proximity, which right now those cul-de-sacs have a hydrant at the end. So, you know, hydrants are typically sized with the more expensive 8-inch pipe. Well, if we can put a hydrant, a public hydrant in the road, it helps us in two ways. Number one, it helps them because now instead of an 8-inch pipe, they can put in maybe a 1.5 or 2-inch pipe, which is a huge difference. Number two, we do a better job of maintaining those hydrants than a private owner does. We're flushing them on a regular basis, making sure they're operable and all those types of things. So, you know, we're in the business of maintaining hydrants, they're not, so it really makes, so there's not a lot we can do except for coordinate and help them make their taps, and we're doing that. We've had numerous meetings with them, and we're doing some parallel design right now, looking at cost alternatives.
Okay. Did that have any impact on the water breaks?
I don't think so. It's hard to say for sure. I don't think that those cul-de-sacs have played any role.
Or the hydrants? Okay.
Or their hydrants, I don't think they do.
And how torn up will this main be with the replacement of the water line?
I'm sorry.
How torn up will the street? I know the plan is to redo the street, but if you weren't doing the streets, how torn up would it get left behind?
Well, we think the main would almost certainly go down the road. So, you know, you're looking at probably a 10-foot trench down the middle. Now you can saw cut a neat line, but then you've got a series of laterals. So you get one long cut down the middle, and a bunch of laterals at each house. So by the time you're done with all that, you generally lose an awful lot of that pavement. Now, is that, I think what you're maybe getting at is, are we still in a good candidate for saving the road or recycling that road to save money? Maybe. I've been kind of pushing for that, and everybody's we're looking hard at that, and we'll see how much we'll look very closely at that question to see whether or not that still remains a good candidate for recycling.
Okay, so let me just clarify. What you're considering is, rather than completely repaving, how do you do it? Grind it up and spit it out differently?
Yeah, you can do a recycling train where you take all of the pavement plus, which is reasonably thick. We're talking north half only. The south half is way too far down.
Right.
Recycle all of the asphalt, some of the stone below it. You do a recipe to add usually some amount of aggregate stone, some cement, and probably an asphalt emulsion. Then you lay it back down and you put a top coat.
Okay, gotcha.
I promised we'd be done in an hour tonight, so, is it okay if we save the technical discussion for another time and continue with the financial part of this tonight? And speaking of financial, we are at 1.4 million in savings.
I got 900, I got 955.
I've got 460 for chips.
Okay, oh, I didn't factor in the
for
chips
the fire
money.
station addition, 600,000 for a truck, 80,000 for Broad, and 110,000 for Leonard. And if my punching the numbers in my little calculator here were correct, that equals $1.4 million.
Yeah, I got 1.415.
Okay, so that was sort of a target. If you want to go for more,
Well,
go right ahead.
I do have some questions about some of the things, and I don't want to take much time, but, last week we did, consider whether we could delay the base oval field at $250,000. Whether we might look at the folding chair situation, which we trust Steve's judgment in saying that many of them are very unsafe and dilapidated, but I wonder if we could be more selective in the number that we replace, and perhaps whether we could get away with half.
Well,
Hold on.
but
I'm not
just I
done.
want to say about safety.
What I'm saying
In the
is,
grand scheme of things, that's nothing.
that's true. But if we're going to spend $15,000 on chair, is every single chair, really trash? That's my question. And the gym community room improvements, I know that Steve was interested in subdividing that space and making individual spaces. I think there were three different spaces, Steve. I know that's only $15,000, but how much can we get in return for dividing up those spaces, and to what extent can that change in our plan?
I would suggest that we go for the big one, the base oval field for $250,000. It may be terrible, but people are using it. It could be delayed 1 year, I think.
Say, that's where I would disagree with you there, Mike.
Okay, okay. You know
I
more
think
about it than I do.
that field gets a tremendous amount of use throughout the seasons with youth football, youth soccer, youth lacrosse. It also, with the residents within the oval, rely upon it. I think when you look at visitors that come to the area too, I think I just think that I would say it would be a necessity as much, and it can become a safety issue as well in regard to the condition of it.
Would it be possible to do half the work this year and do the other half next year?
That I don't know.
Here's
If
my
that's-
question. We're looking at,
Hold on, please. Steve, would half the work be able to be done, or?
Yeah, yes and no. This project has been kicked down the road for half a decade now, if not more. Councilor Ernst is absolutely correct. There's a strong usage of that property and a really big affinity for it as well. As time has gone on, we've kind of delayed because it's just grass. And I don't believe there's actually a safety issue right now. There was a number of years ago. Some of you might remember we had that netting that was the turf was down and then the netting kept coming through. We actually used a slice aerator for many years to just not only aerate the grass but slice and dice that up. So that issue's disappeared. The residents of the Oval have approached me in terms of coming up with a master plan for this property. As much as you guys know me, I kind of hate that planning part. I want to start using the shovel, but I think that might be the right move in this case. Is to there's hundreds of people a day that walk that oval. It seems like in the summertime, and they use that in addition to the trail out back. There's like hundreds of kids that are out there playing. There's people that will park halfway across the area in a parking lot and walk their kids all the way to the playground in the absolute farthest place from a parking spot. So we don't know why that's been put there. There's on-street parking near the church that's an absolute necessity, whether that's a city responsibility or church responsibility, I don't know. But there's also the ice rink there that we can't flood because there's actually no water near that site right now. So I don't know why, I know there's water mains there, and Mike maybe pointed that, but there's no connection to do that. So there are many, many, many things that should be put in. Oh, we also have veterans who are interested in putting more monuments down on the other side, to talk a little bit more about those kind of things. So I think a master plan is necessary in this case, and whether that's part of this or not, and you know, if you've got to push the 250 down the road the next time, I get it. You know, as a side note, the chairs have already signed off on a purchase. They're on the way.
Okay.
So they're coming. That's a safety issue too, all the way. The gym issue, sure, we can delay that. Though our stairs into our offices are now closed off permanently, and I have no source of revenue. I have no idea where we would get the funding to repair those stairs. There's the stairs into the office. There's a 9-foot hole underneath them, and the concrete's broken through.
Oh, that's part of the project, I didn't realize it.
But if I were to try to find a place to fund any repair, I'd start with that project, that wall project, and convert it to something else. So, you know, we can, you know, maybe save 50 for a plan for the oval. I doubt it would even be that much, maybe it would. And that would get a lot of community support from the organizations and clubs to the history folks to the residents. There's a lot of support for that. So I think we could do that, and we could save a large piece of what you're talking about.
Would there be with that project, would there be increase for revenue? Potential revenue?
Absolutely, because part of that plan would be to not only do the plan itself, no. The outcome, the plan is going to ultimately say, well, we need more money. That's a state grant or a CFA process then at that point. But if we can rehab those fields and create the fields that you see in many other communities across the lake, down in Albany, then those tournament opportunities really start to come to fruition. You know, we get a few tournaments now. Lacrosse is bringing one in June that's got 1,200 kids. The economic impact is profound. So those are the things we can start to look toward, but we can't do that with some of these field sports because the quality of the turf just isn't there.
So, since we can't agree on those particular items, can we move on to things that we can agree on? Would that be okay?
But I think Steve was suggesting that he would like to see a master plan done out there in the meantime, and maybe delaying even some of the field work until you have the master plan.
Correct.
Do a little bit now and then do more later, which still would help some of your budget challenges, right?
Yeah,
Could you do half?
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, I couldn't tell you what a plan would cost. These are the things that have been coming to me. There may be folks in the room that might have a better connection to that, you know, approximate what we want to hold back. If it were 50, then we could cut the 200 right now to match what you're seeking. You know, I see that one as maybe a better
Steve,
approach.
could you clarify for me what you're talking about in terms of spending money? Are you talking about spending money on a plan or on refurbishment of the fields?
On a plan, I don't think we could do all of this.
So you wouldn't put any money into the fields at all?
I don't think we could,
And you're talking about 50,000 for a plan?
if that's the number.
You're not gonna borrow that money and capitalize it.
No.
that's
So,
operations.
You couldn't use $50,000 to remediate the field for, you know, a short term.
Isn't
And
the issue kind of, though, if he ends up doing a plan, they may decide to position things down there a little bit differently than is currently designed to make better use of that area, is what you're anticipating?
That is correct. There's a dozen fields almost out there, so it's not just one. We have Mayor Dan Stewart put in a couple fields kind of right in front of the gym, and those are surviving. In fact, just today, our staff was aerating that field and taking care of it. We seeded it. We really made that one rebound over the last handful of years. But it's the other 39.5 acres out there that needs.
So, yeah, so I think it's becoming clear to me that what you're trying to do is maximize the use of the field
Yeah,
by condition, by,
that's right.
with this project.
But you're saying that your preference is to do a study first before you put $200,000.
Oh, of course, I think we have to.
So
So
we're
why
talking
not?
$200,000 savings, right?
Savings.
Right.
Except the 50,000 can't be bonded.
Can't be bonded.
It's 250, we're not gonna bond 50,000 for a plan.
For a plan.
Right.
Capital.
That's
Right.
true.
Well, let's say,
And we wanna finance that over 15 years.
Well, I mean,
let's take
my,
that
que-
out, send Steve back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
He can come back to us with what he thinks the plan will cost. Then we'll talk about the capital. Does that square with everyone?
I think it does, and I
Yeah.
would question the extent to which the residents really are interested in having all of that space used. You know, I've seen parking when there are football games there. I mean, that can really have, much more use can have an impact that I think some residents might object to in terms of parking.
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of residents, and I've been contacted by a number of them saying, you know, as part of the association, they want to see a better plan. They want to see a walking path, they want to see trees
Yeah,
planted.
and I was in on a group that wanted to
Right.
apply for that IOBI grant, but that's,
Can I ask a question? So, yes, I understand 50,000 isn't gonna be bonded, but taking $250,000 out of the capital plan, that would, how much would that, what would the payments be on $250,000?
Probably what, $15,000-$20,000 roughly, I would guess? Per year?
Because that comes out of the general fund. So,
19,000 without interest, I don't think you're gonna get 15 years out of this bonding because we have too much money in vans that have shorter life that's gonna average everything down to about 13 years.
Well, and
So look at this as a 13-year financing plan, so 19,000 without interest.
okay, so that's $19,000. And then I wonder if there are other places of revenue generation that we could, I mean, once we know how much a study will cost you.
Yeah.
Because if that leads to, because this is the constant debate we have anyway, improvement, frugality, where are we looking down the line? So instead of bonding $250,000 for that, we invest $30,000 in a plan that will generate revenue over the long term.
And I
That's
think you could,
23 with interest roughly.
I
Okay.
think you could be a
Then
good
20
candidate for a CFA because he's already identified from this plan, there may be revenue opportunities arising
Right.
from it, so he could get together with Paul and see if they can do some grant writing to help that out too.
As long as we keep this in mind when Steve comes back on the budget in the fall, that we decided to make a strategic decision to invest over the long term carefully through planning, rather than just going ahead and spending $250,000 in the field.
Correct.
So that saves us $250,000 right off the top on the capital.
So I got us $1,718,333.
A million what?
$1,718,333. You take the whole 250 out, plus broad at 80, Leonard at 110. DPW reduced their building spending last week by 46, so we forgot that. And then also they dropped a maintenance vehicle that's 131, so that's 12,333. Plus 460 on South Peru, 160 on the firehouse, and 600 on the truck. 1,718,333.
Boy, I'd love to be able to find another 272,000 and go 2.2
in the
million.
capital plan?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I think you could delay I know it's only $15,000, but I mean, it's the question of when to invest and when we have the money to finance the debt and,
Which $15,000?
the gym, community room improvements.
But when we say when we have the money to finance the debt, we're talking a fund balance, correct?
Well, we have debt service to pay out of the general
It's an
fund.
annual expense, so you only have a fixed amount in fund balance, and
Right.
debt service is an annual expense.
Right.
For the next 13 years.
Right.
So if it's going up $500,000 for the next 13 years, you're gonna get 1 year out of the fund balance. cover it.
And that's just with this, let alone arbitration, anything else that's unforeseeable.
But if we're reducing it $1,718,000, that over a 13-year period, that's $132,000 alone without interest. So you're talking about $140,000, $145,000 reducing that debt service number that was 530 there. So that's a significant reduction. Easily
Over 20%.
over 1% of the tax levy. An annual reduction for debt service. Yeah, based on the numbers we have now, we're going to increase it.
Right. And I'm sorry, could I hear, what came out of Public Works? It was the 90, or?
They reduced their building improvements from 50 down to
Right.
4,000, so that's 46,000 saved there.
I got that.
And they eliminated the maintenance vehicle.
That was 37,000.
7,000,
Okay.
divided 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, so that's 12,333 affecting the general fund. So that would come out of the numbers at the bottom of the schedule, in addition to the other ones we're taking on.
Okay. That's, okay. 37,000 was out of the general fund, or 1/3 of that?
1/3.
Okay.
1/3.
We've taken at least some money from each of the funds. Is there anything else?
I think that exceeded our expectations and
It's fantastic.
But we're not talking putting all this back in next year, clearly, are we? Unless something
Eventually.
falls from the
Yeah.
sky into the bank
Yeah,
account or
that-
something, I don't know. I mean, everything we're saying
Well,
next year, next
I
year.
mean, I'm looking at
Let's not kid
resurfacing for
ourselves.
2018, and I'm going, yow.
There's so many factors that play into this. Reducing expenses will be another, will be another impact on the budget. There will be others. So what I would suggest at this point is that we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion about revenue. Josh is gonna put that up.
Mike, I know you offered every time public comment before. we-
Oh, yes, that's on the agenda. Would anyone like to come up and comment? If you'd like to, you certainly may. If not, we'll move ahead to revenue.
I would just add very quickly, I'd add one comment, and I just feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. In the next 5 years, we've got over $20 million worth of road work slated, and that's not including the $10 million Cornelius Street, so really $30 million in the next 5 years. So we've got, and I understand the concern tonight and this year, but I just want to put that out there. We've been spending a lot of time looking at bridges. We've got another round of bridge inspections coming up. We're going to probably have several $1 million worth of work on bridges as well. So we do have a significant amount of infrastructure work that's going to be really necessary in the coming years. So I want to say that.
And
Okay.
2020 brings us the Cadillac tax, is that correct? Is it 2020? Yep. Okay.
Hey, Josh, would you put the spreadsheet back up, please? Now, working with Richard and the mayor, we've come up with what we think are some increases in revenues on line number 5, those property tax base increase. If you'll scroll down just a little bit, Josh, to the red lettering there. Okay, number 5, did I say, was assumed to be consistent with the 2017 allowable growth factor plus an annual factor for inflation or 1.63%. So if you'll scroll back up to that line, Josh, you can see that year over year we're expecting that the value of our property, or the property tax base increase, the additional properties, let's say, will grow by that 1.63 factor. We're assuming also that the non-property revenue increase will grow by the same factor. So pretty much expecting growth at or about 1.63% for the next 5 years. That's per year for the next 5 years. And then on the next line, well, we'll talk about property tax a little bit later, but does that formula square with everyone's expectations?
Expectations or hopes and dreams?
Well, both.
It translates to about a $5 million annual increase in the non-exempt properties. And I think that on an average basis, we've gone up by 10 million some years, we've gone down by 10 million other years. But I don't think that assumption is unreasonable. We could do perhaps a little bit better than that if we're optimistic, and DRI works really well and all that kind of stuff. We could do worse if we go the trend of other northern cities. I think your goal is to try to be as realistic and honest and split that middle as well. And I think that's a good estimate, $5 million increase in the tax base each year.
So by a lack of discussion, I'm assuming that we're somewhat comfortable with those figures. And we would feel comfortable passing that to the mayor next week to say, this is what we anticipate.
I think it's a good number.
Okay.
5 million. I mean, it doesn't seem to high it or low it. Okay.
Good.
It's based on the growth factor that the state had us at for property assessment increases. The growth allowed the growth factor in the tax cap to 0.51 for 2017. And they're predicting by October timeframe that their inflation factor is 1.63%. So I applied the inflation factor to the growth factor, and that's where you see it going 0.52, 0.53, 0.54, just a slow growth based on what they established as the normal growth rate supposedly for 2017 assessed value. And I use the same thing on the non-property tax revenues, because I looked at our history for those accounts, and in that AIM reporting, it gives you the history of the growth, and it kind of mirrors that, what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years when you look at just specific items. So that's where those two sets of numbers come from. And of course, by giving it to the mayor and having him take a look at it, he looks at it a different way, about a 5 million increase in the assessed value. So if he concurs with that, that means I've done something right.
Okay. Okay.
Or reasonable. Who knows if it's right or wrong?
Right.
It's an estimate.
It's a prediction.
But it's very reasonable and rational at this point.
It's a very educated assessment of where we might go, I think. So, next item on the agenda is arbitration costs. And if you'll go back to the spreadsheet, Josh, we'll take a look at how that impacts us. There's next year, 2018.
Could you give us the line just so I can?
Line 13.
Yes, line 13, there's an increase of almost $800,000 there, 792,811, that we know we're going to be required to pay for fire arbitration. And then on line number 10 in 2018, the additional cost for payroll will increase that amount by $150,000. Does everyone see that?
Could you tell me where we're looking again?
Right on line 10.
Line 10, specifically
Okay,
cell
That's raised.
10, D10.
Notice 10 are permanent changes because that payroll goes
Right.
every year.
Right.
Whereas line 13 is a one-time
Right.
retro payment.
Right.
So it affects the formula a little bit differently. That's why they're entered separately.
Mm-hmm.
Both
So-
of those are impacted by benefits as well, payroll and benefits.
And 207A payments.
Yes.
Those numbers, those are reflected in the numbers?
Yes. And the increases to the disabled fire salaries too, the 207 recipients. Because when regular firemen get a raise, they also get a raise.
And notice it also anticipates every 2 years having the same kind of payment because we're in these 2-year arbitration cycles. So another 2 years we could be hit we were hoping that the next one wouldn't be quite as large as this last one.
But
Kind of
it's assuming about the same amount of,
pretty close to the same amount 2 years, and then pretty close to the same amount, maybe a little bit higher, 2 years from then. But even then, now we're looking at year 2021, and the firefighters are only really being brought current up to what, about 2017 or so. By then, we're always like 4 years behind. But, you know, that's what the city's been dealing with for some time. But we felt it was accurate to try to put in some best guesses, if it's a 5-year plan, what the next 2 arbitrations would look like and how that would affect your plan.
Yeah, you can see the same pattern repeated in 2019 with 702,000 as a one-time payment, and then 150,000 in payroll costs ongoing up above there. And then the same thing in 2021. I think that number might jump up quite a bit, but the payroll cost would stay close to the same.
Why do you calculate such a jump in 2021? Just inflate?
I think the inflation will start growing a little bit more in the future, so the norm will probably be ratcheted up a little bit by 5 years from now.
So in the course of 4 years, you're projecting
So you're
$2.4 million in arbitration awards?
More than that, because remember those 150s
Oh,
each
plus
year. They're
yeah.
compounding, right?
but what
So-
about other?
so you're looking at
what
about
about
2.8.
other union? What about other union
Uh,
negotiations?
They'd be factored in on line 4.
Like regular expenses, inflation primarily for labor contracts.
The numbers I put up there didn't include anything for the fire.
Okay.
That 2.85% is an interesting number because it includes some payroll costs. The largest contributor to that, though, is healthcare costs. We're guessing 4% per year, and that's pretty consistent with the way it's been over the years. So, you know, you put your 4% and then your cost of payroll increases, and it averages out to about 2.85%. So that's why that number's there.
Okay.
So you start to see a pretty realistic picture of what's going on here. That, you know, we've got most of the expected costs captured here, and you can also see what that does to the property tax rates. You know, next year, unless we can find savings, which, you know, fortunately we're doing quite well. We're going to have a 5% tax increase. Well, we've knocked off 1.7% tonight with the cuts in capital spending, so that's a good thing. We've had some discussions about what can we do about the arbitrations, but I don't know if we can book those savings yet or not, because we just don't know. So we have to assume that's the worst case, I think.
Well, it could be worse even. I think it's a very reasonable case.
Yeah, true.
The only thing I would question is, I'm not sure why the baseline figures have gone up. Because the property tax revenue this year is 10,902,000 and not 987. And I'm not sure why the estimated revenues go up over 22,385, because we had a balanced budget. So I'm not sure how those got affected, and I'd just like to see if you know, what that would do if they're set back to this year's numbers, what that changes totally. I'm not sure in the worksheet what affected those numbers.
Okay.
So we can take a look at that too.
Okay.
They're not giant changes. One's only like 5,000 on the property tax revenue, and what difference between 385,000 and 570, so just a little under 200,000 on the total estimated revenue.
Would you take a look at that, Richard, and make adjustments if appropriate?
Sure. I mean, we can highlight those cells right now. We can see where it's coming from.
Yeah, if you don't mind Is that, B 23 you're talking
B, go to the top one, the non-property revenue. And that, was it B?
B18, B18, 18B.
Sorry.
about? B 18?
18B, yeah.
Okay, so that's an entered number,
Yes.
and the next one down is an entered number, okay, those are right, then what's this next one? How's that getting affected?
Calculated based on BDP.
So something must be added into the non-property revenue, but added to that. It should be 10,902,264, that's.
You can just change that right there. 10,902, 284?
264.
264?
Yep. And then that dropped the next line down by about 100,000. But 60,000 higher. Oh, I see where that's coming from. We're reducing 2017 by $100,000 in anticipated savings. Gotcha. On line
okay.
C12, C11.
C11, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Those are reductions in permanent long-term expenses. They were saying we hope to save another $100,000 this year by more careful budgeting, and we seem to be kind of on the trend for savings this year. The department heads are really starting to identify more savings.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we're good with the revenue and how that plays out over the next few years. Josh, would you throw up the agenda again, please?
Throw it up.
See what's next.
Take that in a couple of
arbitration,
weeks.
we talked about. Ongoing wage costs, we talked about. Tax levies would be the next item on the agenda. We should have some discussion about, you know, what are we comfortable with and what do we feel comfortable giving to the public. And if you'd throw the spreadsheet back up, please, we can take a look. Those numbers that you see there with bright green on row 7, those are there because they make the fund balance down below look good. At least look at least look
0.44% is good.
Well, no, it's not, but it's positive. It's positive.
Positive, yeah.
Notice the big fall in the fund balance this year is primarily because of paying for the firefighter arbitration, just kind of wiping us out.
Yes.
And then it anticipates with that level of tax rates, trying to slowly build that fund balance up to about 5%, not now, but not till 2022. But slowly trying to recover, get back to where we are now, and then start building it up to the lowest end of your 5%, 5 to 10% window in 5 years from now.
Now, the tax rate for next year is, I mean, we've already possibly reduced it by about 1.7%.
So we're looking at 5%.
It's not that easy though. Go down just a little bit more in the spreadsheet or just off the screen, just 1 or 2 lines, because isn't there a couple lines missing still? Josh?
Josh,
Pardon?
you want to scroll down a little bit?
Just a tiny bit, not quite that far. Just so we get, there you go. So you got the tax increase right at the top. That line in in line 33, to attain those tax rates of say 5%, 5.5%, those numbers in red are the additional, essentially mostly permanent savings and expenses that we haven't identified yet. That you'd be saying if you want to impose a 5% tax rate in 2018, I'm gonna have to propose to you 741,000 additional savings for the next budget to make that happen.
Well, and then in the next year,
Right. That's a lot of money. And those are on top of the 741. Those are permanent savings. Those aren't just 1 year savings. So each year we have to contract that much to make those tax goals, or you put in higher tax figures and save me the work of having to find those savings.
And
No.
the public is not going to, the public will not accept those tax increases over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma.
And And if you add those numbers up, in red on row 33, like those first 3 years, that pretty much equates the structural deficit that we've had for years.
Sure.
So we'd be asking
That's about the,
Mayor Reed to do what needs to be done, which is to make expenses expenses meet revenue.
And look at those permanent reductions, pretty closely correlated to the big retro pay arbitrations that we're getting.
Sure is.
Well, it's clear that you can't just stop doing capital projects for the next 10 years.
No.
No, you can't. Get
seems,
back to gravel
seems
road.
clear we can't afford the services that we've been providing.
Yeah, it's more the ongoing stuff than the capital. 'Cause remember, the capital, you always have the luxury of spreading it out over 15 years. It's more and unfortunately, much of our expenses every year in the city are from having people do the things that the citizens expect to have done.
I will.
So they're very, very difficult choices we make, but you see that interplay, you either raise taxes or you reduce expenses. And those expenses are primarily in people, so it's very difficult.
If you take those big red numbers out, will it automatically adjust the taxes?
No, you'd have to put in your different tax rates and see if you can lower the.
Keep the same
So you can
balance.
try a few more tax rates up there, see if you tolerate a 6, 7% rate increase instead, and see what would happen to your.
D18?
In D,
Uh,
up in
D7?
D7.
D7,
yeah.
yeah.
Change that to a number that, if you change that to a number, you'll see the reduction below will change.
7%? Jeez.
Wow.
15, Josh.
Too much.
There, now you're making some progress.
One
Not
fell
to
swoop.
be misunderstood, that that's our desire at all.
It's double digits.
You know, this, one thing about this that, I know we have to work from what we have right now, but, you know, we talk about property tax increase. We're not really talking about revenue here at all, other revenue. And we're not talking about it because we don't know, but there will be an impact of the DRI. All of that development will have an impact. And there are other things that we can do, and I'm gonna bring it up again, exploring expansion of the marina. You know, what are we getting right now in revenue from the marina?
140,000 in revenue.
And that after we pay, after it pays for everything, all of its expenses.
It depends on if it's a ban or a bond.
Okay.
Right now, it's about 75.
Okay, so expansion, and because we're talking about structural changes, right? We can see here, we can't structurally, we can only cut and make savings off of capital projects so long. Are we gonna go towards cutting services by virtue of cutting personnel? Okay, the city is famous for its services. And does that drive people out of the city? And does that then do we go into a cycle of decline? So I think structurally we think about expenses, but also we need to think positively about structural revenue changes. And even, you know, beyond expansion of the marina we have, quite frankly, we have those docks. That was a gift. Creating another smaller marina that can generate some revenue for us. I know those are chancy items, nobody wants to talk about spending a dime, but you can't just cut. You've got to develop at some point for the structural integrity of the entire system.
If you wanted to have that discussion in 2022, I'd be right on board with you, because we'd have a fund balance.
Well,
But we don't have a fund balance. We're gonna have to invest money in those docks or anything else of a similar nature in order to make money on it, and we just don't have it.
How do we protect the fund balance?
What do you do?
I mean, arbitration right now has taken away a large amount.
Yeah.
So if we're building to 5%, for 2022, how do we protect it from any damage?
The thing you can't do, I don't think, is keep going back to the bottomless wallet of the taxpayers. They're not gonna put up with it, and I don't blame them.
Well, and I agree with that. I'm not talking about throwing a bunch of money out there that we then have to make, we basically substitute all our cuts for bond payments. But if we can invest in a development that will itself make payment on the bond payments, as well as generate some revenue, I don't see the loss in that. To me, that's win-win.
Well, Steve is right now exploring, we've not slowed down in our design for the marinas. We're still planning those out, et cetera, even though we know we're in litigation and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But Steve's got some ideas for how much revenue he could generate on a permanent increase basis for, say, a Wilcox dock. So you can put in an enhanced revenue up here on, say, for next year on D8, put in a permanent revenue increase, a positive number, to see what happens. What do you think? And
One down
there. What do you think, Steve, you could net in net revenue after expenses for Wilcox dock, for instance?
32 is a safe number right now. That's after
Good sale.
expenses and after a bond.
Okay, thanks.
32,000.
Well, also the expense on the oval field, if you could attract tournaments. Sure. That's a good direction to go.
So that probably helps a little bit, but we're looking at $750,000
I know,
of gas.
I
But
know,
everything helps.
but every nickel helps, and development leads to development. It attracts more people, and then you've got more things happening. So it's not, basically we've got, where'd it go? 35?
Oh, sorry.
35,000, is that what you said, $35,000? 32. You said, so we've got $32,000. And the other things that we've achieved is we've made the city more attractive. We've made it attractive quality of life for the city residents, which, by the way, quality of life goes to not having your water main break and having water that you have to boil orders all the time.
You have to
And
prioritize water.
and roads that are good, but also the life of the city means opportunity. Opportunity that people want to stay here and they want to come here. If we have young people getting housing in downtown and they can have an affordable slip for a 20-foot boat, and how cool is that? We're a waterfront city and we have make the least use of our waterfront. It's ridiculous.
The way I would like to approach all that, Becky, is if those things happen, and I wouldn't discourage any of our department heads or any initiative in the community that would bring in more revenue, but if those things happen, then, midway through the year, we can say to the mayor and the department heads, well, you don't have to cut all that money. You don't have to find $710,000. You only have to find $400,000 or whatever it turns out to be. But this is what we've done in the past. We budgeted on hopes and dreams, which are just fantastic. I don't want to sell them short, but
Whoa, I'm not talking hopes and dreams. We have proven revenue. It's proven. It's on the books. It's right there.
As you can see, we can make $32,000, but that doesn't put a dent in it hardly puts a dent in the amount of money that has to be saved to balance the budget.
You're just saying if there's any money that's being made to the investor.
I'm saying two things. One is you seed something, it grows. And it seeds itself over and over again. So you can't.
If we don't have any seed money. If we did, I'd be right on board with you. I promise.
Yeah, there's a couple things with this, and it was something I had actually sent to the mayor and Councilor Ensel this afternoon, which is with the GE docks in particular, to Mike, Councilor Kelly, your concern, the pace that I envision is within a few weeks, we should get our final, should get some quotes on the engineering, the docks, and the parts needed to retrofit them in the most optimal configuration, which could get us, as is, could get us up to about 43 slips, 44, something like that. There's two things with that. One is, we don't have to spend a dime, we just got the quotes and the information. We can do the permits then, which are very, very low cost, no cost, if at all, to get those rolling if the council agrees on the plan itself. Once again, not committing any expenses. From that point, mid-summer, let's say or late summer, we have an idea that these permits are going to go through, we can then start taking deposits on 2018. And then we will know what that commitment level is very, very soon. So throughout the fall of 2017, we'll know at that point what our rental rate is going to be, and then what we can do is commit those funds to do the engineering, get the parts in over the winter, install in April. So we don't have to spend any money without knowing almost for sure whether we're going to get it or not. But we have those commitments from those people. So that's when we do it. The second thing, to Councilor Casper's point, is this project, if it's specifically earmarked for Wilcox, which was recommended by the New York State Canal Corporation, which, as we know, is the property owner of Wilcox Dock, they've said, in no uncertain terms, that this is not how they want their organization represented with that property. Their properties across the state are far more enhanced, much more user-friendly, more in line with park benches and good parking and things like that. They've said that this project would or could be a good match for future grants. So getting beyond the spreadsheets in this project in particular, or if it's the Oval project or something else, if we can find those revenue streams, even if it's a matching grant component, we're creating these opportunities for people. We're creating a waterfront park in the middle of downtown in a place that used to be an oil dock. That's a win for everybody, and I think that's one of those places where we really should be focusing on making it grow and making it work. So it gets beyond the spreadsheet, but I think it's a vital component to who we are.
I would be comfortable with plugging a number into D8 there.
Can we put $1.5 million in there for a minute?
Where?
Man, I'm sure. Let's see what that does.
That's a little bit too high.
Well, go ahead, Josh, 15 million, let's go.
Sorry.
Big spender.
So excited.
Well, if we had a windfall of $1.5 million,
I mean, a permanent revenue increase of $1.5 million each year. That's the number I've been harping on that we lost because of Dock and Seaboard and our reductions in the water and sewer funds. Now, if you build the revenue back up to that, I was just seeing how that would impact things.
Why didn't it change the number down below?
Doesn't change the number and.
The red number.
Or no, it does.
I just, and I know it's getting late, but I just want to say that if, this spreadsheet of all the functions that it's serving for me, looking at this bottom line, is that we can't just keep cutting projects, because we're gonna come to a place where we're starting to lay people off, and then we cut services, and then this is not gonna be a place where you wanna live, whether the budget is balanced or whether you have a $300,000 fund balance.
I would argue that this isn't gonna be a place where people wanna live if we're taxing the daylights out.
Mike, I understand that perfectly, but all I'm saying is, part of the equation we haven't really discussed is how we build the revenue, as Richard is saying, back into it. And so we have to look for those opportunities where the possibility of stimulating growth doesn't put a big hit on us where we have to raise taxes 10%, but where there is a manageable opportunity, understanding that things come to fruition. There is nothing that breeds success like success.
I mean, I think I agree in principle with what you're saying, but I would also suggest that we have seeds that are going to be planted very soon as a result of the DRI. And that those will yield increases in revenue, we hope. And perhaps the better suggestion is to factor in some of those projections and be more careful about what we would have to personally contribute.
Okay, but do we know that each of the projects that are approved, they were not approved because they held the potential of revenue generation. It was to improve, to revitalize downtown. So to me, it's a much more amorphous kind of eye on the future. What will happen? You know, one would hope that we have increased properties that are taxable and so forth. But really, what else, what other structural revenue will the revitalization create?
We don't know.
We don't know. So it's hard to
That's
put
why
it
it's
in
hard
a
to look at
line.
it if you don't know.
You can't put it in a line there.
If
That's right.
You know, the 32,000 is a big jump in revenue for our recreation fund or rec complex fund, but we need like 50 of those. So do we envision 50 of those $32,000 increases somewhere with all the revitalization that's going on?
Right.
Again, I think the wise thing to do in this budget is to not include those. Now, if you want to start an endeavor in which we actively seek revenue, that's great. At the end of the year, next year, when our fund balance is much larger than we thought it would be, we'll have a celebration, you know?
Okay, but one point I want to make, when we started talking about doing this 5-year plan, we sat at the table and I said, whatever this plan is, it cannot be something that puts our feet in cement. That when we come to the fall and we start talking about the budget, we don't look at this and say, oh, we said this, and so this is the way it has to be. This is a planning tool that we took 5 weeks to do. So it cannot lock us in shackles. And I'm fine not putting that $32,000 in there, but I just want to I'm going to keep harping on this, and I'm going to keep saying, if we don't develop in a responsible way, all the cutting in the world and saving the tax levy is just not going to matter. And I'm just going to keep saying it.
I almost agree with you in that.
Say it one more time.
Say it louder.
Just in the sense that, you know, there has been probably tens of millions of dollars invested in our city over the past couple of decades. I know, you know, since I moved here 22 years ago, there have been just initiative after initiative after initiative, and yet our revenue stays the same.
Well, you know
the
what?
number of people who live in the city has remained the same.
That's why I ran for office, to have a voice in how the money is spent, because I had some degree of confidence in my own ability to plan responsibly for the future.
Now,
and I think you guys felt the same way. So I think, you know, we can do better.
I think we can too, but it gets back to that foundation thing. We have to have that solid financial foundation, and then once we do, the sky's the limit.
I'll just say it one last
really
time.
believe
If
that.
we can invest in development at no extra cost,
We must do it.
then we must do it.
I agree. I agree. Why would you not? That makes perfect sense.
All right.
But as Richard said, you'd have to have 50 of those $32,000 increments.
Every journey begins with the first step.
Okay. Okay.
I think keep in mind,
too.
you're going to be doing this exercise every single year, so this doesn't bind you into anything longer than the next 6 months of decision making.
And even when the mayor's budget comes to us in October, we're allowed to tweak that also. So we can do that.
If we get 10 of those $32,000 a year for 5 years.
So put the spreadsheet back up, Josh, if you don't mind. And we're kind of at the end of the discussion here. Is the council comfortable with what you see here? I mean, is this a decent 5-year plan?
Are we willing to go back to the taxpayers and ask 5% next year, 5.5 the next?
But a question I have, because this is just our 5-year plan right now. We know that there are things in the works that will impact this, maybe more negatively or positively. So, I mean, what do we do with this now?
It's
I
just,
think
It's a guideline.
yeah.
It is a
We
guideline.
have
It's put something on paper, it's given us figures to work from or to.
It's not written in
It's a
stone.
start.
And
Right.
we saw how easy it was to go in and when initiatives happen and when money comes in to tweak.
And when money goes out, I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of unknowns.
And you may want to open this up again during budget writing season, but this helps you clear your mind for the budget writing process, understanding that if you only did 2% increase this year, what would you then have to do to catch up next year because you aren't keeping up this?
Right.
I mean, this is a moving picture, and the budget in October is a static picture. And those series of static pictures create this moving picture. This kind of gives you an idea, strange ideas, an idea of how everything may pan out. But every year you got to revise it because it's going to pan out a little bit different than what you imagine now. But it's not a binding document at all. It's just an expression of expectations.
If you put it back up and reduce the debt service by about 150,000, roughly, that figure right there, that 530, 130, one cell below, because we just said we're taking 1,718,000 out, and it's about 150,000 reduction, rough numbers. So just minus 150 on that.
Just put in 380 instead.
Either. Now, what's that do with the red numbers at the bottom?
Yeah.
It helps.
They're dropping
Helps
down
quite a bit.
Yeah. So it's still a big debt service increase in the general fund, but we've reduced it. And if we can keep that permanently reduced,
That's a big if.
that's a big if.
That's a
Yeah.
big if. I mean,
With all the road work and everything that has to be done, the
Yeah.
infrastructure.
it's
The
impossible.
whole country's faced with that, though, there's infrastructure crumbling everywhere.
Yeah.
John,
Not alone.
John hears about, sewer systems, we're like $4 billion behind those, water systems, $3 billion behind those. You hear the massive numbers about the nation, it's just staggering to think about what has to be done.
One statistic that impresses me is that New York State as a whole has lost 10% of its population, I think, over the last 20 years. But and some towns have lost even more, but our city remains the same.
We heard that today at the DRI. In terms
It
of,
increased 20 through 2010. We've had a modest decrease, about 600 people or so in this decade. But a lot of communities are in a lot worse shape than we are with regard to that.
So I think, if you want to make our city a better place to live, you've probably already had some impact on that because people are choosing to stay here rather than go south or go wherever they go. And that's a good thing.
And I also think there's some bright shoots coming up. I think when we look at the next set of population figures, and we may have leveled off and started going up again, you see the new developments on, South Route 9 and new plans in the works, et cetera. There's reason to be hopeful, but I don't think you want to, as a budgeting tool, you don't want to plan on hopefulness. You want to plan on realism and then hope for hopefulness. And then that's going to give you the latitude when you revise this next year and the year after that and the year after that to start doing some of the things you're talking about.
I think what we should do is, I believe we've given Mr. Marks enough information to plug that into the state controller's 5-year plan. And that is what we should present to the mayor next Thursday. Is everyone okay with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this set of numbers is adequate too, I think.
You
Either one.
think?
I think you should reflect on it a little bit while though, and then we'll talk more next week about it, and you can kind of finalize your statement of revenues and expenses for the next 5 years then. The only problem is I think you have to do it by a resolution. It's not a resolution that says you're gonna have to have these revenues and expenses for the next 5 years. The resolution is that you're resolved that these are your expectations at this time. So we'll have to figure out some way for you to do a resolution.
So I'm thinking of the member of the public who pays attention and notices that part of our expectation is that we're gonna have to increase taxes 5% unless we find 700, or how, whatever number of.
No, that was.
No, it's including that. It's-
Including 741,000 reductions.
Oh,
We have to do
including,
both.
okay.
Yeah.
Do both.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
It's a bigger nut to crack
Mm,
than you think.
yeah.
I didn't take this job to have to pinch pennies. I thought we were gonna make a huge difference too, but I realize now that if we are gonna make a huge difference, we have to have that foundation. Once we get that, then we can go forward confidently to grow.
This will be an ongoing conversation, and, you know, I appreciate the two perspectives, and I think it's a really appropriate kind of counterbalance in points of view.
When initiatives present themselves that net a positive amount, then we'll look at them.
So, Richard, you're saying that the spreadsheet we looked at tonight that's a sufficient 5-year plan?
Think so.
Okay.
Well, frankly, I think we have hashed this out. I don't need any more time to reflect on it. I think we can just bring it as a resolution next Thursday.
We can check over the figures and make sure we have everything in the right places, but I think it's pretty realistic to show that, you know, the problem we have is not only raising taxes, but it's also cutting costs. It's doing both. And that's a realistic set of figures based on the assumptions. Now, we can test all the assumptions by next week and make sure that they're valid and rational.
Okay.
But it shows it's a tough road to hoe for the next 5 years.
Now, we've made some cuts to capital. Does that have to be by resolution also?
By next day, yeah. You have to make a resolution on Thursday.
Next Thursday, we will have resolutions.
That would technically be a budget adjustment because we adopted the capital plan as part of the 2017 budget. So, yeah.
So that would be the first resolution, and then the latter resolution would be to give them the 5-year plan.
The 5-year plan really needs to be nothing more than 5 years of revenues, expenses, a statement of what you expect you need to do with regard to taxes and expenditures. Just a very 3-sentence narrative kind of thing is all of the charter implies. It's not like a big document that you have to publish, so you can do it in a resolution.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.